call this Board of Alderman meeting to order. If you please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Clerk, can I have a roll call, please?
Alderman Bowman.
Present.
Alderman Bachman. Here. Alderman Reese. Present. Alderman Milner.
Present.
Alderman Dickerson. Here. Alderman Long.
President.
Alderman Turner. Here. Alderman Levison.
Here.
And Mayor Hassing.
Here, and we do have a quorum. Good evening, everyone. We do have a ceremonial matter tonight. I have a proclamation to read tonight. On September is National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. I'm sure if anybody watches the news or pays attention, you know that this is a very serious issue in our country and a very sad one. So I think this is it hits local sometimes. So, whereas September is known around the United States as National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month and is intended to help promote awareness surrounding each of the suicide prevention resources available to us and our community. The simple goal is to learn how to help those around us and how to talk about suicide without increasing the risk of harm. And whereas suicidal thoughts can affect anyone regardless of age, gender, race, orientation, income level, religion, or background, and whereas according to the CDC, each year more than 41,000 people die by suicide, and whereas suicide is the 10th leading cause of death among adults in the U.S., and the second leading cause of death among people aged 10 to 24. And whereas Harrisonville, Missouri is no different than any other community in the country, but chooses to publicly state and place our full support behind local educationers, mental health professionals, athletic coaches, PAC leaders, police officers, and parents as partners in supporting our community and simply being available to one another. And whereas local organizations like Suicide Prevention Services and national organizations like National Alliance on Mental Illness are on the front lines of a battle that many still refuse to discuss in public, as suicide and mental illness remain too taboo a topic to speak on. And whereas every member of our community should understand that throughout life's struggles we all need occasional reminder that we are all silently fighting our own battles. And whereas I encourage all residents to take the time to inquire as to the well-being of their family, friends, and neighbors over the next few days, and to genuinely convey their appreciation for their existence by any gesture they deem appropriate. A simple phone call, message, handshake, or hug can go a long way towards helping someone realize that suicide is not the answer. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Brian Hassig, do hereby proclaim the month of September 2018 as National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month in the city of Harrisonville, Missouri, dated August 20th. So just be sure that you take that advice. I think it's a very easy gesture. Sometimes just smiling and waving at a person is all it takes to make their day, or compliment them that, hey, you look nice today or something. Any little thing can go a long way to making somebody feel good. So I hope everybody will take that and run with it. So thank you. Okay, that's it for our ceremonial matters tonight. At this time, I will open the floor to public participation. Anybody who would like to address this board, about anything on our agenda or something that's not on our agenda, please feel free to step forward at this time.
Good evening. My name is Jack Hopkins, 309 Johnston Drive, Raymore, Missouri. Thank you for the opportunity to address you again this evening. And thank you for taking the extra time to consider which bank you should award the city's banking services contract for the next 3-year period. Community Bank of Raymore is happy to have had the contract for the last 7 years. We're happy that we had a chance to bid on it, and we appreciate your additional consideration. We feel like that we have presented the proposal that best meets your needs based on the RFP outline based on the evaluation criteria included in the RFP. In our opinion, as stated last time, the city staff has provided you inaccurate, incomplete information during the entire evaluation process. It's been very disappointing for a long-time vendor. While you probably deserve to hear each inaccuracy and incomplete item discussed in thoroughness this evening, I'm not going to bore you with that. But I would like to draw your attention to at least one item. If you turn to page 23 in your packet, if you'd be kind enough to do so, it's titled Attachment 180-820, Final Staff Report, Banking Service Revision Number 1. While you don't really see a cost comparison analysis per se on page 23, you will see a statement at the bottom of that page that shows a disadvantaged figure of the Commerce Bank proposal is the fees that the city will incur. That figure is shown as $17,637 annually, or since it's a 3-year contract, you're talking about $52,911 for the term of the contract. The comment goes on to say, in quotes, in all caps, offset, in all caps, my earnings credit allowance of $17,637 based on an earnings credit option provided. Everyone see that? And that seems to indicate there'll be no cost incurred because the city staff plans on leaving the balances to offset the fees. Does anybody disagree with me or read that differently? Well, let's actually do the math to make sure that we all understand what we're talking about here. If you look at that information, you're going to see that $17,637. Let me pass out the math so you can follow along with me on a little sheet. If you're kind enough to pass it down, I probably have extra copies. $17,637 is what you're going to have to earn on your account. At Commerce, under the proposal, you're going to take off 10% of whatever you leave in that account, just sitting there empty, not earning interest for the reserve requirement. Then you're going to earn 5.55%, so a little bit more than 0.5% interest. So solving that algebraic equation gives you, you're going to need to keep $3,563,030 in the account, not earning any interest in order to offset those earnings, those charges. If you look at page 28 of the packet, you're going to see that the city only had $3,570,498 in all of its checking accounts on average during the time of the review. So basically the city, if this is accurate, would be leaving 100% of the balances sitting idle in an account and aren't earning any interest, if you're to believe what's included on page 23, the way that I think at least we all read it. The fees, however, are only part of that cost differential between the two proposals. Keep in mind, with Community Bank of Raymore, you can take out all the money. There's not any minimum balance requirement to be maintained at Community Bank of Raymore. But under our proposal, you'd be able to invest that $3,563,030 at our current interest earning rate, which is 1.75%. which would give you, in 1 year, $62,353.03. So since we're talking about a 3-year contract, granted we're in a rising rate environment, so we're talking about what the current interest rates are. The additional cost to the city in that scenario, as outlined in the city comments, would be $187,059.08. Again, just to be fair, if you read the letter that I sent most of you, I calculated it'd be a little less than that because I wouldn't leave any money sitting in an account not earning any interest at all. I know the city's been doing that at Commerce already, but in fairness, that's not maximizing the city's earnings. So I go ahead and pay the fee if you do choose to get a Commerce. I hope that gives you a little bit of an idea, just one way that I feel like that the city's information is misleading and inaccurate. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but in conclusion, again, thank you for the opportunity to serve the citizens of Harrisonville for all this time. We do feel like we have the lowest cost proposal before you all, and we'd love to continue to provide service to the city of Harrisonville. Anyone have any questions or like for me to answer any questions?
questions tonight?
If not, thank you again.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to speak this evening? Seeing no one, I will close public. Oh, Mr. Raines, were you getting ready to get your, if you're getting ready to get up, I'll keep it open just a little bit longer. Sorry, a lot of times they're rocking in their seat, ready to go.
No, that's fine. I didn't really want to drag this on anymore, but if anybody has any questions about the letter that I sent last Thursday, I would be glad to answer those as well. And if not, the only thing I want to point out in the letter I sent is this bid seems to be focused around, pretty much around interest earnings. And the only thing I want to highlight out to you is in reference to my letter, I'm not sure where it's at in your packet, but the third paragraph down, about the fifth line, there is a statement in there that shows what we have done with the city's investments over the past 3 years. And these are actual figures of the $12 million that's with our capital markets group invested in short-term securities. We've averaged 85 basis points more than Fed funds target. So basically where Jack's saying they're going to be at 175. Fed funds target is 2. Our average track history for 3 years has been 285. Now, we do not put that in the bid. We cannot guarantee that. It's subject to market rates changing, so we just don't feel like it is a fair analysis to put that in there. But if you look at our 3-year track history, I think it's fair to say that is a decent return. And page 2 of my, actually it's probably page 3 for the duplex, but the figures that I've shown in here on the far right, you can see where we essentially took $3 million, just roughly figured, take it and put the same yields on it. And you can see that the average return, because of this improvement, is going to give us a $76,000 improvement to our top line. Okay? That's really all I want to point out. That's a little confusing, but just so that you understand what that meant, that's why it was in there. So essentially what we would be saying is we would take the excess $3 million, do the same thing we're already doing for you guys, and essentially get you the same return that we've been doing, as you can see, over the past 3 years. I'm sure Debbie and Marcella can attest to that. So, does anybody have any questions over my proposal?
Questions tonight?
I have a question for you, Aaron.
Yes, ma'am.
I believe I understood you to say that you sent this to the city on Thursday. Is that correct? Unfortunately, we didn't see this until after 2 o'clock this afternoon.
Okay.
It was inadvertently left out of our packets.
Okay.
So we haven't seen it until just this afternoon.
Okay. So you probably have not had time to read it and understand
Not
it.
as much as I would have liked to have it on Thursday.
Well, since the beginning of this, this has been about interest versus services is what this has come down to. This really isn't any different than anything we've already proposed. We took the figures that were provided to us, and we did get an estimated monthly fee of $12.70. I think it's $12.79. And the figures that Jack had are pretty close. I believe he was using 17. So, what I would encourage you to do is put that 3-year track history on top of what we've already stated. And we're basically saying that based on what we've done in the past, we are going to get a higher return than just the Fed funds times 60%, which is 120. So, 285 is basically what our average return has been over the last 3 years.
I have one more question for you.
Uh-huh.
And again, I'm not a banker.
Okay.
It's just disclosure to you. Commerce Bank backs the bonds on the marketplace TIF, correct?
Well, the city is the agent that collects the tax and then.
Correct,
yes,
informs it to Commerce
Uh-huh.
Bank, correct, okay. So in essence, we would be having, if we chose to go down this route, we would be having a loan account with your bank plus a depository account with your bank, right?
Well, the city is not necessarily the borrower on those bonds, so.
But
they're
the city makes the,
agent.
but the
Yeah.
city makes the payments to
Correct.
Commerce Bank, right? So, I guess my concern is just having all of our eggs in one proverbial basket. But can you give me any kind of
Yes.
comfort there?
Well, as you can see, you guys already have 12 million invested with us. Those funds, I believe for the RFP was requested at 105%. So, which means your deposits are fully protected. So, you know, we've proven that banks can fail, and they do fail. That is an important question, but your deposits are, they're guaranteed up to 105% of the securities.
Okay. Appreciate that.
The only other thing I want to comment on is in the RFP, you know, it's stated in here that the register would be open to the public inspection only after award of the contract. Proposals of institutions who are not awarded the contract shall not be open to the public. And it's been a little frustrating that my bid has been open to the world. And, you know, which we've talked about the fees and the interest. However, our pricing's been disclosed, so, you know, I think this needs to be brought to a vote. I don't think it's been properly handled, the way this has been allowed for the bank to compete against this. You guys should open these bids, you guys should look at these bids internally and answer any questions to the banks. You know, we can be there to answer questions. This shouldn't turn into what it has. It's really been quite interesting, so. If anybody has any questions, I will be glad to answer them.
Any further questions? All right,
Thank you.
thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? All right, I'm going to close public participation. I want to thank Mr. Raines and Jack for both getting up here and presenting your cases for us. I appreciate the additional information. So, moving on, we have approval of minutes from our regular board meeting of August 6, 2018.
Move to approve.
Second.
A motion from Alderman Dickerson and a second from Alderman Levison. Is there any further discussion?
I have a question.
What's your question?
At the last meeting, I discussed basically reads from executive session.
Correct.
I don't see those in here. May I ask Randy where they're at? Is there any comment in here about my, or any record of my comments about executive leaks?
I know that there's typically, and correct me if you can jump in, Randy, if you want, that it's usually a kind of a summary of
Right.
what, not
Under
necessarily.
Alderman and committee reports,
Uh-huh,
I just do a
kind of a high level type.
highlight of whatever the Alderman spoke on, and I did put Alderman Bachman said he had received information about possible leakage of executive session information.
What page is that on?
So it's 7.
Yeah, it's down towards the bottom, the little line there, Alderman, yeah. I mean, it doesn't have a word-for-word account. I believe if you want a word-for-word account, it's down there on the bottom of that page you just flipped over.
What's on page 8?
Yeah, item 7 is what
Okay.
Marcy was referencing.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
That's
On
okay.
bottom of page 7.
Okay. That's fine.
Now, if you wanted something word for word, you would have to request to have
I-
the word for word place, which that's not what you want. And then-
No, I just wanted to mention.
Okay, very well. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Moving on to our agenda items. First item we have tonight is Council Bill 51.
First reading, Council Bill 51, 2018 tax levy and ordinance levying a tax for the current expense of the city of Harrisonville, Missouri upon real property and all tangible personal property of whatsoever nature and character subject to taxation by the city of Harrisonville for such purposes. Also levying a special tax upon the aforedescribed properties for public parks for a total tax levy of 0.6658.
All right. Wants to head this one up? if I'm correct, this is we are not changing our levy, we're keeping it where it's been. Am
That's correct. And Mayor, if I may respectfully ask that you open this to public hearing before it's considered.
Sure. Oh, I'm sorry, I did miss the public hearing. That's totally my fault. I apologize.
That's
How
fine.
did I skip right over that? Okay, so we need to backtrack here because I goofed. At this time, I will open the floor to the public hearing on the 2018 tax levy rate. I apologize. Is there anybody who would like to speak at the public hearing on the tax levy? All right, seeing no one, should we reread for first reading?
Yeah, I would close the public.
All right, I'm going to close the public hearing, and then we will move on with the first reading of Council Bill 51.
Once again, first reading, Council Bill 51, 2018 tax levy and ordinance, levying a tax for the current expense of the city of Harrisonville, Missouri upon real property and all tangible personal property of whatsoever nature and character, subject to taxation by the city of Harrisonville for such purposes. Also levying a special tax upon the aforedescribed properties for public parks for a total levy of $0.6658.
All right. Sorry, I think usually they're a separate item, and I think that's how my eyes scanned over it, so.
That's fine.
My apologies, thank you for correcting me.
Just like I just needed, yeah, it has to be recorded as such.
I agree.
Before it goes back to the state auditor's office for final piece. So as presented, the tax levy is not scheduled to change as far as the levy itself. It's based on the assessed values. Assessed values are created by the county, which most everybody knows, that is sent to the state auditor's office, and then they create the documents that basically outline the amounts that the levy should be set at. We review those documents, make sure they're accurate, make sure the calculations are correct, and then bring that forward to you all for approval. So in turn, there's been a little bit of change in the assessed values because we've had some new construction, we've had some changes in personal property values, so we will generate a little bit more income, but the state says you can't generate a lot more income, hence the reason why the levy can't change. It's supposed to be what they call revenue neutral. And so the revenue is basically the same, therefore the levy stays the same. We end up ultimately generating a little over $32,500 for the year projected in 2019 based on these calculations. The actual dollar amounts will change based on collections, but that's the process that this goes through. Once we have an approved, and I respectfully ask that you approve this tonight, so if you waive the rules, I would appreciate that because we have to send this document back to the county, and then the county is required to have the documents in the state auditor's office by September 1st. And so to accommodate that, we would ask that you do that this evening. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions tonight? This is kind of standard procedure, so unless you have something special, I would entertain a motion to suspend the ruling and move Council Bill
I
51.
make a motion to suspend the ruling on Council Bill 51 and move it to second reading.
Second.
A motion from Alderman Dickerson and a second from Alderman Turner. I'll need a roll call vote, please.
Alderman Long,
Aye.
Alderman Turner,
Aye.
Alderman Bockelman,
Aye.
Alderman Bowman,
Aye.
Alderman Milner,
Aye.
Alderman Reese,
Aye.
Alderman Dickerson,
Aye.
Alderman Leeson.
Aye.
All right, second reading, please.
Second reading, Council Bill 51, 2018 tax levy and ordinance levying a tax for the current expense of the city of Harrisonville, Missouri upon real property and all tangible personal property of whatsoever nature and character subject to taxation by the city of Harrisonville for such purposes. Also levying a special tax upon the aforedescribed properties for public parks for a total tax levy of $0.6658.
All right, roll call again, please.
Alderman Dickerson,
Aye.
Alderman Long,
Aye.
Alderman Turner,
Aye.
Alderman Bowman,
Aye.
Alderman Bockelman,
Aye.
Alderman Leeson,
Aye.
Alderman Reese,
Aye.
and Alderman Milner.
Aye.
All right, and Council Bill 51 will become ordinance 03444. Council Bill 52, Mr. Welch, is this, I know you and I spoke before this, do we need to, you said there was additional information?
So in everybody's seat, you have 3 items that were not included when we put it in Minitrack. Didn't realize the mistake until today. One of them was Mr. Raines' letter that he was just talking about. So because of that, and because of a letter I received this afternoon, I think you all received an email copy of it this afternoon. We we recommend that the board postpone this until September 10th, so that you can review the materials and that we can talk to the other bank's attorney about the issue that was presented before us today.
We need to postpone this before, so.
I make a motion that we postpone it, Bill 52, until the 10th, is that when you said you wanted it?
Yeah, the only issue this is gonna cause is that we probably won't put into effect new banking until late this year or early next year, because we'll be getting into budget and end of the year processes to wrap up for the budget year. But I think everybody wants to have a chance to look at the information.
Since you previously determined that you were going to skip that first meeting in September, I thought, and go to a later meeting, you probably need to also acknowledge that you're going to establish a meeting on the 10th.
We did.
I thought you scheduled it for later in September.
No, September 10th, because it was the
Okay.
3rd was the holiday and then
Mhm.
the 17th.
Yeah.
My mistake then. I
Yeah,
apologize.
we looked at the calendar, so, yeah.
Okay.
But thank you for pointing that out. Okay, I have a motion to postpone. Do I have a second?
Second.
Did you second? Okay, I have a second from Alderman Reese. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, Council Bill 52 will be postponed. Council Bill 53.
Council Bill 53, a resolution of the City of Harrisonville, Missouri City authorizing, approving, and directing the employment of certain law firms to represent city in potential litigation against contributors of opioid addiction crisis.
Careful there.
So in the report, what we have is there's some different lawsuits that are up against the pharmaceutical companies because of the opioid problem. I believe the state attorney general is doing something on the east side of the state. Cities and counties are doing it. There's also a large group that is getting with cities and counties on this side of the state of Missouri and in Kansas to bring them into the lawsuit. So if you're not a part of this lawsuit, then you cannot reap any of the benefits at the end, which could go to law enforcement or EMS. Because of the amount of work or extra work that's been put on law enforcement, extra work that's been put on emergency services, because of the problem of opioid addiction. So if this lawsuit would be successful, then we would get our portion after the attorneys would get theirs. We do not pay anything up front. It's all on the attorneys, and then we would only benefit on the back end. Cass County has signed up for this, as well as St. Joseph, Buchanan County, Lafayette County. It's just now getting to the different cities that they can sign up for this. They're just starting that push. There are a number of cities and counties in Kansas that have signed up for it, on the east side of Kansas. So we saw this and thought this would be something that we bring before the board for you to consider. You don't have to vote on it tonight, because it would be engaging a law firm that's out of California. They apparently have some experience in this, and they are part of a large, part of the group that is also defining this in Ohio. One of their members has been assigned to this case, so it seems fairly important. But you might want to look that information over a little closer, have some questions, and then we can vote on it on the September 10th meeting.
So we have a resolution on here. You're suggesting not go forward with the resolution if, okay.
I just might mention that in a lot of these kind of national type cases, that the attorneys will find some defendants, some plaintiffs that they can create a class action on. And it's my understanding that the courts did not think this was appropriate to create a class action. So the way the attorneys, some attorneys in some of the cities and counties and other governments have looked at is that they've been signing individual engagements with law firms to try to pool the resources. It makes it, I suspect, easier for them to afford the costs of such litigation, because this is the type of litigation I anticipate would be very costly to go forward. We did, Happy and I reviewed the agreement with the law firm. I made some changes that they accepted to clarify some of the language with respect to reimbursement expenses and on what number the fee would be calculated to the benefit of Harrisonville. And they accepted those changes, and so that's where we're at right now.
What fee are you talking about?
There's a contingent fee with respect. As opposed to the city, there's two ways that fees are typically paid. Either you pay an hourly rate to an attorney, or the attorney takes it on a contingent fee basis. In this case, they're requesting 20% of the fees after the costs are deducted from the gross amount. So in other words, there could be a gross settlement amount, then other than the court filing fees, it could be deposition filings, a number of miscellaneous smaller fees, but the big fees, the fees that that they would spend prosecuting the case are deducted from the gross amount, and then they get 20%, and then all the various governmental agencies, they would then get their pro rata share of that remaining amount.
So, I'm just curious, I mean, this just sounds a little too good to be true. So they seek us out as a community and offer us their service in a possible lawsuit, and then they'll take a big chunk of the money at the end if by chance they win.
I think the reason they're seeking out and they're making these, because they're trying to sign up as many governmental entities as possible, because that makes whatever cost they're expending more reasonable. When you look at because the number, if I have one client and I'm spending a lot of cost, I'm a lot better off if I have 100 clients, because the amount of cost that I will spend going forward with the litigation won't be significantly more, but I could get a settlement for 100 clients that will give me a better return as an attorney. That's my speculation, is that the way that it seems that they're proceeding, which in this case, I think it's about the only way this type of litigation would go forward.
I just say it sounds, I don't know, it's just, they're just fishing for clients, I don't know. It just sounds interesting to me.
We don't have to do it.
No, I'm just saying, it just seems odd that they're seeking out clients that they're maybe going to sue because they think they can get some money from somebody, and
Well, I think they see an opportunity, that they think this is something they
And
have a
I
good
hope
chance
they're
of
right.
winning, so they're
I
trying.
absolutely
But like
hope
he
they're
said,
right.
they can increase their take by having more people involved,
Sure.
so Alderman Bachman here.
Isn't that the way all class action lawsuits work?
Well, actually, no, not exactly.
Or similar?
In similar ways, but in the typical class action, you can be part of the class without signing an engagement to represent the firm. So many years ago, I had a client that had a specific type of valve that went into a heart, and there was a class action that was eventually settled, and anyone who had been implanted with that valve that died because of that valve got a specific amount. The company paid an amount into a fund. There was never any contact with that specific client ahead of time. If the court decides that it's not going to be a class action, as I believe happened in this case, then there's either nothing happens, or you will find different attorney groups that will sign up a group of clients, and they sign contracts with each one of them so that their lawsuit expenses are more efficient. It makes more sense to them. Their projected or potential recovery could be a lot higher because they have multiple clients.
On a legal, since you're advising us on legal, what is the downside of us doing this?
Actually, the way we negotiated the contract with them, I don't really see a downside to the city at this point, because there's no cost to the city if they lose.
And that's usually the way class actions work.
From that standpoint, but in In many lawsuits of this type, even if the matter was lost, the client would end up paying some of the expenses. In this case, they've agreed that the city will not have, they will advance the expenses, and the only time the expenses even come into the calculation is if they win. And there's actually a monetary award to the city. One of the things we discussed is there's the potential of what they call equitable settlements. And I rewrote that aspect of it because I wanted to make sure that even if it's equitable, that there's a money fund that the attorney's fees will come out of. So for example, if they set up a fund to benefit any person who was damaged by unnecessary opioid prescriptions, the money for the fees would come out of that fund and not out of the city's general fund. So the contract was specifically adjusted to clarify that issue, and we got a confirmation from the attorneys that that's the way the contract will work, and I changed the language actually.
So that's, everything's okay on that.
Did we have the same thing?
Oh, hold on a second. Alderman Bowman had a signal.
Thank you. I have a couple questions. Mr. Welch, could you tell me, how did this information happen to come to you? How were you made aware of this?
We received an email from one of the attorneys. His father lives in the Kansas City area. And they contacted us, and have been contacting other cities on the side of Missouri and on the Kansas side.
I'm just curious how a law firm in California found Harrisonville, Missouri. So Mr. Fairfield, this law firm is actually litigating against Big Pharma. They're litigating against the pharmaceutical company.
I have not personally researched these attorneys. We received sort of a resume from them, and I understand that that's what Mr. Welch approached me, and primarily my review was with regards to the agreement with them.
Right.
To make sure that the city would not be exposing its general fund.
And I think it says in the package something about that it's litigation of the pharmaceutical industry. So-
Yes.
But here are my other questions specific to Harrisonville. And I'm glad we're going to postpone this until our next meeting, because I'd like to have this information before we vote. I'd be interested to know how many calls has HPD and HFD, the police department and the fire department, seen for opioid addiction involvement in Harrisonville. I would just be curious to know that. And then how do we calculate our increased cost? You know, the assumption is that this addiction is causing increased costs, and it probably is. But how do we quantify that? Instead of just making a general statement saying it does, is there a way to quantify that? And then I'd like to know what the opinions are of Chiefs Hofer and Chief Myler, the police department chief and the fire department chief.
We talked about it in our department head meetings. We haven't talked specifically, but we've talked about this opioid lawsuit. I haven't had any negative comments come back.
I mean, it's clearly a problem. I'm not disputing that it's a problem in our country, but I just am curious to know why, kind of like Alderman Milner said, why they've identified Harrisonville, you know, a law firm in California.
Well, if they'd already contacted the county, that could be another thing. They're looking at each town in the county, that could be another.
Right, because Cass County has signed on.
Alderman Dickerson had.
Well, I just
And then-
wanted to echo that we had a lawsuit like this once before over the cell phone. And we did winning, I think it was $124,000 for the lawsuit. And they
And
saw
what
it
it cost?
just like this. And there was no cost to us, so we had done it before.
Okay. Alderman Turner.
Well, in our documents here, they're right between one of the law firms is from Kansas City area. So, from Kansas City area would know what Harrisonville is.
Alderman Bowman, you mentioned putting this off. Would you be wanting to make a motion then to postpone this?
I would make that motion that we postpone consideration of this resolution until our next meeting.
Okay. I have a second by Alderman Reese. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And we will postpone Council Bill 53. meant to announce this at the start, but obviously I'm tripping this today. Or my own words, but items D, E, and F made it on here inadvertently. This was not supposed to have moved on to our regular agenda. So anyway, that was an error. So those 3 items need to be crossed off the list. We will be discussing, I believe at our next meeting, Mr. Patterson will be discussing what these are essentially dealing with. Am I correct? I mean, this was not prepared, it was not supposed to be ready for this meeting, and it popped on here.
There will be a completely separate ordinance for the next meeting.
Correct. So, anyway, I apologize for that. So we are down to item G, Council Bill 57.
First reading, Council Bill 57, ordinance to accept the final plat of Maple Tree subdivision, a subdivision of land being a replat of lots 1, 2, 3, and the south 25 1/2 feet of Lot 4, Block 1 in Moody's Addition in the city of Harrisonville, Cass County, Missouri.
Good evening.
Mayor and members of the Board of Aldermen, this replat of the northwest corner of Bradley and Forest from Lauren Smith, who's with us this evening, is a companion application to the vacated alley that we did at the last meeting. The plat reconfigures 3.5 lots, 3.5 of the original lots into 3 lots. The home that is presently there will stay, and then there will be 2 additional lots for new homes in the neighborhood. All the lots meet the minimum size and frontage requirements. This comes to you with a recommendation of approval from staff and a unanimous recommendation of approval from the Planning Commission that considered it last week.
Okay. Questions? All right.
I make a motion to move Bill 57 to a second reading.
Second.
Motion from Alderman Dickerson and a second from Alderman Miller to move Council Bill 57 to a second reading. Is there any further discussion? We'll need a roll call, please.
Alderman Long,
Aye.
Alderman Bowman,
Aye.
Alderman Milner,
Aye.
Alderman Turner,
Aye.
Alderman Bachman, Alderman Dickerson, Alderman Levinson,
Aye.
and Alderman Reese.
Aye.
All right, second reading, please.
Second reading, Council Bill 57, an ordinance to accept the final plat of Maple Tree subdivision, a subdivision of land being a replat of lots 1, 2, 3, and the south 25 1/2 feet of Lot 4, Block 1 in Moody's Addition in the city of Harrisonville, Cass County, Missouri.
Right. I'll make the motion to approve this as written.
He just has to do a roll call now.
No.
So we're good, but thank you. Roll call, please.
Alderman Bachman,
Well, you think
Say aye.
Alderman Bowman,
Aye.
Alderman Milner,
Aye.
Alderman Reese,
Aye.
Alderman Levinson,
Aye.
Alderman Dickerson,
Aye.
Alderman Long,
Aye.
Alderman Turner.
Aye.
And Council Bill 57 will become ordinance 03445. Mr. Smith, we look forward to seeing what you build over there, sir. Thank you very much.
It started pretty quick.
That sounds good. Sounds good. All right, that concludes our agenda items tonight. At this time, we'll move on to our Alderman and Committee reports. Alderman Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Alderman Reese and I would just like for you to know that our next town hall meeting is September 8th at 9 a.m. at the United Methodist Church with a program presented by the Cass County Public Library.
Alderman Bachman.
the last meeting, I mentioned we want to get together with you and possibly our city administrator to discuss with various people the vagrant and homeless issue. And I was not able to put that together since the last meeting. Are you still there for the next week or so?
Possibly next week. This week's a little full.
I'll plan accordingly.
All right.
Thanks.
All right. Alderman Reese.
Yeah, this bank thing, I've gone through every paper and every email, and I have read and read, and I am a retired school teacher. I'm a retired school administrator, and I don't know a lot about banking. And I think that many of us sitting here are the same way. We have other interests and other things. Anyway, my point being that we're being asked to make a relatively important decision. And frankly, the way it has come down, it's come down to, we have to decide it's like a ball team. Are we Roosters or are we Wildcats, you know? And I think that that's wrong because both of these institutions are good institutions and they've served our people well, both of them have. And so my question is, I mean, we still have to do that, but my question is there any way that we can have some sort, God, this is a school teacher in me, I guess, but I need more information. I need somebody to sit down and say, without saying on page 28 and 32 on line 6, and I need to be able to go through it one piece at a time. And I need to understand the differences in all these papers. Is there any way that a representative for each one of those banks can come together with a group of us that want to have more knowledge about that?
I suppose you could do that, but I think as one of the banks mentioned, that typically the way these things are done, according to statute, is that the bids are received, they're closed, they're open, an analysis presented by staff, and then there's a vote, without discussing publicly what the terms necessarily are. Now, that's come out irrespectively, but I'm not sure how comfortable they are to continually have public hearings over the same issue. At some point in time, I think the board needs to either make a decision or reject all bids and start over.
Okay, in that case, is there anybody that can explain these papers to me better than I understand them now?
I would highly recommend you make some time with Marcella and Debbie, and I'm sure they would be more than happy to go over it and explain what the papers are, what they're saying. I don't think, I've spoke with both of them because I've had questions, and they did, it never one time did they say, well, this is why we want this or that. It's, this is what they're saying, this is what they're saying, this is what we were talking about, and it was very objective. It wasn't they, you know, trying to sell me on anything. It was, this is, they were very
I
objective.
guess my question, Brian, is does everybody feel comfortable with this?
Judy, I didn't until I had some discussions with them, and I asked them some questions, because they deal with this all the time. We're not. And there's, at some point, we put them in a position where we are trusting them, okay? So, yes, there's some stuff that happened, and we've got, you know, both sides come in. So ultimately, they're the ones working with the banks, and they understand it, and you can hear what issues they've had, what's good, what's bad. They really can explain it and explain it well. Also, I have gotten phone calls from people in my ward asking me specifically to go with a certain bank. And we are a voice. So we're their voice. So that's the other thing. I want to know how they feel, and I also want to know how my people feel, because that's what we're on the board to do. But we are trusting them. If they're saying, we realize this is the best option for us, at some point we have to trust.
So what you're saying pretty much is that we should just listen to them and
We
do
ask them
whatever.
questions, and we get some understanding from them. And they have very much answered all of my questions I've had.
Okay.
So I would highly suggest you sit down and talk to them, because I did.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else?
No, I think that was it.
How was your mother?
She was good one day and bad the next day. Today was a good day.
Well, that's good. That's good. We know you had to leave suddenly, and
Yes,
and
I
we are-
apologize for
No,
that.
but we are happy to hear that. So that was not a problem. So.
Thank you.
Alderman Miller.
Two things. Jeremy, don't leave here before you reset my phone for me, please.
Busted.
I have been waiting for you to show up for a long time. I didn't set you. Oh, seriously? No. No, it's just gone again, so I need you. Okay, so my question is, there was a comment made by Mr. Raines. The information became public. It's normally not public, and you just emphasized that again with, it's normally a closed bid. We get the documentation, we make the bid. How did that information get out?
That was by my direction, trying to make sure everybody's got the information so that we can get a comparison for you all, because there seems to be a lot of consternation with the board.
But it's different from us getting it and getting it in our packets to the public.
I think it appears
Correct?
Yes, and I think it, because during public participation, they started making them public. So, I mean, I think they took the stay.
Oh, and they did, but I'm telling you, people have seen the documents.
We didn't publicize it, we didn't.
If they've seen it, then that's because of whoever received it
Yeah,
is.
distributed it.
That was,
Yeah, no,
that
we-
was the questions I was.
Yeah, no, we didn't
Yeah.
publicize.
Okay, anything else?
That's it. Oh, just everybody drive careful, please, school started and kids are everywhere.
Yes, they are.
They are everywhere.
All right, Alderman Dickerson.
Nothing?
Alderman Long. I'm good to go. Alderman Turner.
I went to the kickoff party for the Booster Club last Saturday, first annual, pretty good. Had a lot of stuff going on. Crowd wasn't as big as they liked, but maybe next year we'll have more. Junk and Truck was extremely busy. It was the busiest one we had last month. The square is full, the parking lot is full. Hopefully the next month we'll have just as many. That's it.
All right, Alderman Leeson.
Nope, nothing.
Mr. Welch.
Put into the packet a question for the Finance and Personnel Committee about meeting either the week of Labor Day on the 5th or 6th, or the next week, 12th or 13th. We need to look at the technology policy. I think we've got it finished, we just need to finish highlighting it, but once we get a meeting established, then we can get it sent out.
Everybody who's on that, would please let Mr. Welch know what works for you.
Unless you have any other questions, that's it.
All right, my turn. First thing I want to point out tonight is you know, we talked about the tax levy being kind of a routine business. I don't believe we've actually voted to change the tax levy since I took office in 2015, and part of that is because I pushed in the belief that you have to follow a trend. Sometimes property values are going up, and you want to look to reduce the rate. Sometimes they're going down. You look to increase the rate to keep your money the same, but I think if you were to take and average out the changes from year to year, it would net pretty close to zero because of the fluctuation we've had in property values, and that's why I'm a firm believer in you don't necessarily adjust it every year. You kind of look at it as a running average and make an adjustment every few years, and that seems to have worked out well for us. The dollar figures either way have not been significant, so really it's not in our best interest to mess with it when it's not significant. I had the opportunity to attend the ribbon cutting, minus the ribbon, out at the new water treatment plant. It's a very impressive facility. It's been functioning now for about a month, roughly.
Yeah, Ozil's been online for about a month.
So I've actually taken water out of my water filter and out of my faucet and compared it, and it's hard to tell the difference. Actually, I just, if I'm at the fridge, I'll fill it with water because I'm right there. If I've got ice and standing by a faucet, I just throw water in it and don't worry about it. Want to remark, because Mr. Coburn's back there reminding me, the solar lighting, it's very unique in that building. They shut all the regular lights off and just the solar lights were on, and you could see just about as well as you can see right now in there. It's a very impressive addition. Makes it look even more high-tech, and for an old building, they really fixed up the old part of that building. But no, it was a good event. I believe Alderman Turner had about 6 snow cones at the event. Burns McDonald had invited the snow cone truck out to treat us all, so that was Shivers was out there, so I just had to give him a hard time. But no, that was a very special moment. Mr. Jerry Gibbs, our former Public Works Director, managed to make the trip, as well as Bob Serber, the former Public Works Director, was able to attend. So it was nice for those gentlemen to be able to be there. For me, it was a proud moment because I know back in December of 2015, we were working on submitting our application, working on water rates. There was a lot of commotion going on over what rates we should submit, on what we needed to do. I was heavily criticized for turning down our original rate increase, and it was said that it would delay this project. It would cost the citizens $1 million more because we had delayed the project. We weren't going to get our low interest financing. Actually, what the people paid out of pocket, and if you looked at the difference in the rate structures, it was actually $2 million difference that didn't come out of their pockets for this particular project. So It ended up working out, and I'm glad that people had faith that I thought we could get a better deal, and some others. We put a lot of work into it, and it did come out good for the voters, and we have a new water treatment plant open on schedule, no delay, and I believe our cost overruns were less than 1%, correct? Which
Correct.
is pretty amazing for a project like that. And finally, I'm going to close with, I have another item. I know last meeting I addressed about business being run out of town. You know, things float around town, and it's not good for the city as a whole to hear false information. There's a lot of things floating around about the old hospital and about the group that wanted to do that project to make it into a senior living village. The only thing that happened on that project was they were not granted a 353 or even went through with the process. But they were offered an alternative to waive all building permit fees, which I believe was around $50,000. That, of course, would have had to come before the board, but that was an offer that we made to them. They were not interested in that. They've owned that building for quite some time. They've let it deteriorate, and that was no fault of the cities, no fault of the citizens. They have not moved forward. They have submitted some plans, but have done nothing with them. And it's my understanding they haven't paid some of their contractors, like the electrician, on that project. So to me, it looks like it had more to do with money. If you remember correctly, they also lied to this board and to the citizens on their developer review about their financial situation. They did not disclose information about a lawsuit that they were in the middle of, and that was one of the questions, was whether you had been sued or you were defaulted on a real estate transaction, and they had been sued for defaulting on a real estate transaction. So that project is still out there. If they wanted to come do it, there's nothing stopping them outside of themselves. So there's nothing that's been done here at this city hall that has prevented them from moving forward with that project or doing anything. So just wanted to clarify that. Believe everybody enjoyed the cool weather today. I know I enjoyed the rain. My yard needed it, not that it helped much. My grass has already died in the areas that it was lively, so I guess too little too late, but it is nice to see some rain and some cooler weather. That's all I have this evening. Mr. Dickerson?
I move that the Board of Aldermen go into closed session, each pursuant to the following situation of the revised state statutes of Missouri. And it's legal action, cause of action, or litigation involving a public governmental body.
Okay, I need a second, please. Second from Alderman Turner. Any further discussion?
Hopefully.
Could I have a roll call, please? Roll call.
Alderman Turner? Aye. Alderman Long? Aye. Alderman Dickerson? Aye. Alderman Milner? Aye.
All right, we are adjourned to executive. Thank you, everyone.